this would only result in a civil war in Afghanistan, only a civil war.
Which is what happened the last time.
I think people underestimate, and this is a discussion we had yesterday with Barney as well, is, when we talk about Afghanistan, we should not forget that there are Afghans in that country, that there are people who have ideas about how they want to live and have had that for centuries. We are in a war and have been in a war of pretty much sovereignty, wanting to live. We could have submitted if it was about submission to an idea and to a superpower who wanted us to accept a certain way of life. We could have done that with the Soviet Union. They were much better than the Taliban, and they were not destroying wedding halls. At least they're building infrastructure in our country. But the Afghans would not submit to any kind of enforced ideology or rule on our country. The Taliban are a proxy of Pakistan, of not just Pakistan, Pakistan's intelligence agency. Afghanistan would never accept to be ruled by Pakistanis. I mean, if we didn't accept Soviet rule, superpower, it would be beyond imagination to accept the proxy of a backward country which has hard time feeding its own people.
Well, let me ask just two last questions before we turn to the members. One of which, of course, would be the happy subject of Pakistan cooperation or duplicity, as the case may be, in an Afghanistan outcome. But to go back to your prior point, I mean, as you know, the tyranny of decision trees is that the probability of all the outcomes has to sum to one. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have a peaceful outcome, at least a peace agreement, then by default, you have endless war. Mm-hmm.
Who says that the peace agreement will end the war?
What does that look like to you, and how long, or if you say, what kind of, given the awful sacrifices made by the Afghan National Security Forces, what would be the magnitude of the support from the outside that would be required to sustain the government of Afghanistan in the next phase of the endless war?
Okay, it's not an end. It may look like that to the outside audience. Afghans live a life. Yes, we have an insurgency that we are fighting with. We're not the only country that has insurgencies. To term the Taliban beyond that is an over-exaggeration, and I think there are a lot of Taliban apologists who would like to make the Taliban look like a government in waiting. It's not a government in waiting. It is an insurgency that's fighting against its people. It rules by intimidation or wherever they have any control. We just took back 5 districts from the Taliban this year. And to talk to the people in those districts would tell you that they have been living in starvation. There are no facilities. It's literally brute force that the Taliban apply and force those people, mostly agricultural farmers, who to even provide for them. There are no facilities in there, and it's dictatorship. I don't think the free world will be able to sit and watch a regime like that return to Afghanistan, first. And second is that it is not, again, it's not a war, it's an insurgency. And our security forces each day are more capable of dealing with it. When I became ambassador to the United States in 2015, Kunduz had just fallen. I couldn't explain it to people. Journalists wanted to know. Kunduz city had fallen to the Taliban. I had no idea what to say. I had just become ambassador. It was a new world to me at the time, but it was also a new world to understand what just happened and what are we dealing with. It took us a few months, perhaps even longer, for us to fully understand what really happened there. And that was, we had no command and control. That was it. Everybody had done their job. The intelligence agencies knew that that attack would be launched by the Taliban. The military had prepared, the police had prepared, but nobody was coordinating. We just had the biggest exercise that required coordination at every level at this election. Like I said, the Taliban launched a war against elections throughout the country. There were 273 attacks that they tried that was averted on the day. And before that, we arrested 14 suicide bombers in Kabul alone that would have had a large-scale impact attacks on the city. And the best coordination that even RS commander praised for. So the security force that couldn't coordinate to defend one city, to a security force that was able to maintain security throughout the city, throughout the country, is a big progress. We, this year, have been facing the Taliban's most vicious cycle of attacks, 4 phases of attacks on Afghanistan this year. And at every phase, they were defeated. The last one was the defeat on the election day. The Taliban the backbone of the Taliban is broken. Their ideology has no stance anymore. Their ideology was they were fighting for Islam. Well, this is an Islamic republic. They don't have any buyers. We have had ulamas from Indonesia to Saudi Arabia state that the insurgency that the Taliban are conducting is un-Islamic. They said that they are working for a free Afghanistan, a sovereign Afghanistan, because they considered this US involvement in our country as an invasion, and that we are an invaded country. So for that reason, they would have to free, our country and appealing to the Afghans' sense of sovereignty. Well, that again is proven wrong. Today, the educated Afghans that you helped us, achieve, are asking questions. Well, what is the Taliban's relationship with the ISI? The Afghan relationship with the United States has a bilateral security agreement that was ratified by our Loya Jirga, by our parliament, by our Senate. What is Pakistan's relationship to the ISI and all the other intelligence agencies that fund them? What is their relationship to Al-Qaeda? What is their relationship to the other terrorist groups from the region, including IMU, ATIM, and the likes of him? Jaish-e-Mohammed, all of the affiliates of the Taliban, they're not able to explain. So the Taliban are finished ideologically, they're finished politically, they're finished on the war front. It is not an endless war. We see an end to it, both militarily and an end to it politically. Now, the Taliban can choose which they want to see. We're committed to protecting our country. If we have to do it and we have to contend with an insurgency, we have the provisions for it. The force is prepared to deal with it. Our CRU units in the police that deal with, I think Pete sitting here has had a recent interaction with them, are some of the best CRUs across the world. They are able to avert attacks that would take days for other countries to deal with, for other forces to deal with. We do it within hours. The amount of attacks that happen, and within hours they're defected. 5 ISIS attackers entered one of the tallest buildings in Kabul, our Ministry of Communications. One of them blew himself up and 4 entered. Now, any other place, that building would have been able to take, they could take 2,500 people hostage. We cleared all of them, right? All 2,500 people were taken out of that building. No hostages were taken. We didn't allow them to take the building hostage and attack, including target the presidential palace and anywhere else they would want. It would have been the highest point. Now, that shows the proficiency of our units that are ready to deal with insurgency. And we're building more and more of that across the country. We had them in Kabul. We also had them in the neighboring provinces in Logar. Now we're building one almost complete, with one in Kandahar, one in Jalalabad, there is one in Mazar-e-Sharif. So with each zone, we'll be able to repel any attacks like that within hours, if they were. And our regular forces are able to clear areas. This year, like I said, has been a very good example of us pushing back against the Taliban in their areas that they previously controlled, some for a year and others for even 5 years, the last 5 years we hadn't been. And nothing has changed. Right? We have We have had the same force. It has just become better and better. So we can defeat the Taliban militarily. It will just take longer. If they choose to have peace, we would save some time, and we're happy to do that any day they're ready.
Well, as a segue to Q&A with the members, I would only add that last week Imran Khan sat in that chair and managed to say that not only are the Taliban confident and on a roll, while disavowing any support, of course, for the Taliban by the government of Pakistan or the ISI.
Nyagakon Gary, Borough Associates. Thank you, Mr. Mohib. Prime Minister Khan was in your seat last week and was pretty effusive about the Pakistani-Chinese relationship. So my question to you is, what role do you see your neighbors, whether it's the Tajiks, the Uzbeks, the Iranians, or the Chinese, playing in the peace process? I mean, it's interesting that the districts next to the Tajiks and the Uzbeks seem to have stabilized much more than other parts of the country.
Well, in the last 5 years, and particularly the last two, the focus of the Taliban has been on the north and the northeast. The economy shifted to the area. Our transit routes were largely with Pakistan in the east and the south. President Ghani wanted to diversify, so he opened new transit routes with Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and also through the Iranian port of Chabahar. And so the focus of the Taliban had also been on the north to destabilize it, because that way they can pressure the central government and cut off our supply routes. We've had insecurities in places like Tahar and Kunduz and Saripol and other that had been on the route to that, and for that exact purpose. But also some regional terrorists, ATIM, IMU also have interest. The IMU are the Uzbeks who operate because they can. That's the territory where they feel most comfortable and also are closest to their original target. That is the countries of their interest, not Afghanistan. And IMU in Badakhshan again because of ATIM in Badakhshan because of its proximity to China. So these countries are naturally fearful of the growth of instability in these provinces and wish to play a role in bringing stability to Afghanistan. But I'm not sure if they're very vested in the form of governance that happens in Afghanistan and how. What they would like to see is threat eliminated from those territories that could potentially become lethal in their countries. We have very good cooperation with the Uzbeks. They're we think a very natural partner for us, a neutral and natural partner for us in stability, because of the historical role that Uzbekistan played in the growth of Islam, and what the cities from where we have had a lot of good and Islamic literature. So we have that, and they're also politically very neutral and wish to play a positive role. The Chinese, again, have been very constructive in this process. But again, I think they don't care what kind of government comes into play. What they would like to see is no threats to them. Their relationship with the Pakistanis is much larger than they were. But they're starting to understand Afghanistan better. They have had more engagement with us in the last 5 years, and we can see that their interest keeps growing.